Hello, how are you today? Uh, I've never done this before, but I've thought about it. I watch a lot of YouTube channels, and I thought maybe I would like to talk about Kiwi life, New Zealand. Um, Now, if anybody watches this, hello. If anybody doesn't, I'm talking to myself, which, as you get older, I have to admit, I have been known to do once or twice. Anyway, this is going to be a story about me. Maybe my grandkids might watch it one day. About my life growing up in New Zealand, and a bit about New Zealand itself. I can tell you there's not going to be one episode. There's got to be more. There's just too much to cover. And I can get off on a tangent. I can start on one lane and end up another. I always put it down to being an Aquarian. We're quite the fickle star sign. We never know what we're going to do next. So, anyway, we will make a start. If I'm waffling, I'm sorry. I hope you get to understand what I'm saying. I hope you enjoy it, because this is only for entertainment. There's a wee bit of Kiwi knowledge, especially around my city, Dunedin. We're a very small city. When I was growing up in Dunedin, 105,000 people lived here, compared today to 136. So not a big population, just little, but very nice tight community. It's very nice. We have Scottish roots. Dunedin is actually Scottish Gaelic for Edinburgh, and so a lot of Scottish settlers here since the 1840s, I think, was when we first started colonising New Zealand, or Dunedin. And a lot of Scottish came here because they liked the landscape. It reminded them of home. And so they settled here, and all things Scottish is still very prominent today. I love going to St Andrew's Day into our Octagon, which is our main town city centre. And I love listening to the bagpipes. I grew up with listening to the great bagpipes. They're just wonderful. And you hear them all around Dunedin all the time. It's part and parcel. And we have our castle, Alarnix Castle. Sits on the hill. It's now become quite the tourist little attraction. And we did have Cargill's Castle, but it's gone to ruin and it's kaput. I heard whispers recently that they thought they might try to rebuild it, but I don't know how you're going to rebuild a castle from ground up. I mean, I think only foundations are left. As a kid, we used to get up there and have a look round. Very dangerous, but we didn't care. We're kids. We were brainless, as kids are. You know, if we can find in a little adventure, that's what we do. And it was in my neighbourhood. A little about me. When I first came into the world, I was brought into a lovely family. When I say brought in, I was adopted into. Seven of us. Great mum and dad. Loving mum and dad. I'm sure I gave them most of their grey hairs. I was a nightmare. I had my good days, but I had nightmare days too. But mum soon sorted me out. I think in today's world, if I was young again, doctors would have me on hypoactivity, I would have been, classed as hyperactive. But my mum knew how to deal with it. She'd say to Dad, right, come on, we're off to the gardens, we're off to the beach, we're off to the here, there, and she'd just let us go. Now, my sister, my darling sister, she was quite happy to walk along with hand in hand with Mum and Dad. There's pictures of her and Mum and Dad, or Mum. And I used to say, where am I? And Mum would go, oh, you're probably way ahead or way behind, and I go, oh, probably, yeah, I'd be running somewhere. Running, that was my speed, run. I had all this energy, but I used to play hard and sleep hard. So Mum always used to say, Pam, I could put you down to bed and not worry about a thing. Now my sister, she was the opposite. One little noise and she was awake, and what was that? Me? No. I was down for the count. But then, once I was awake, I was awake. And I'm still like that today. I go to bed early and I'm up ready for the day. Mind you, I'm finding as I'm getting older, I'm not sort of as fast as I used to be. But anyway, getting back to my younger days and New Zealand. Like I said before, I get on tangents. So, where was I? Oh, yeah, family of 5. So, I'm the youngest. Oldest brother, 20 years older than me. Next was sister, 18 years older. Next brother, 10 years older. And then my sister, 16 months, 17 months older, maybe. I'm not calculating it at the moment. It's close enough. So I was 3 weeks old when I came into the house, and my oldest brother went off and got married. And don't remember my sister getting married, the one that's 18 years older, but she married and she moved away to Christchurch, which is 5 hours away. She had a chip on her shoulder, as I found out later. Don't know. Don't really care. The only time we ever saw them was when we were shunted up there for holidays, just to give Mum and Dad a break, which I understand. Sometimes Mum didn't keep well. She needed that space. And then when I was 10, the next brother got married. Oh, I did love that boy. Still do. He's a handsome bloke, and he was. And I used to stand at his doorway watching him, getting his hair all nice and tidy and straight. In those days, men used to put brill cream on their hair. Now it's spray things and whatever, but in those days it was brill cream, and they'd comb overs, and I used to see him get all spruced up for his date, for his now wife. And then he was gone, so it was just Sis and me. And so we grew up together. We were sisters. Had good days, had bad days. She was a mouther. I was a slapper. Go away from me. She could think of something to say straight away. I'm not like that. I've never been one to just say something off the cuff. I'm one that has to think about it. Think about what they'd said, contemplate it, internalise it, and think of what my answer would be. By that time, the situation's gone, so yeah, So she'd run to Mum. Pam, help me. And Mum would go, sometimes I would just like to knock your heads together and put some common sense in them. Sorry, Mum, but I do remember you saying that. Not that you ever did, but it was what you used to say, all about the common sense. But anyway, great sister. Now that we're married and in our own lives, best of mates. She's my sister. She's I love it to bits. And so yeah, first house we grew up in, I was 1 to 5. We had a nice house. It went to school for the first time for the first 6 months there. And then we moved into Tānui. Now, we're 2 islands. We're not a continent. We're not old like England and Europe and Asia and all that. We're not old. We're 2 islands. We just popped out of the sea, so very young country, very young. We haven't been around for centuries. So very young in our mindset, and also as a country, we don't have the traditions a lot of countries have. We don't really have traditions. We are very open-minded. We're not very judgmental, and we're very multicultural. Now, in the 1840s or 1860s, can't remember when, but in the 1800s, gold was struck. So Chinese came over, and a lot of the descendants of those Chinese are still here. Of course, it's a very Maori city. It's Otapopo, and kia ora to any Maoris watching, and New Zealanders. Otherwise, I just said that for nothing, because as I said, I'm probably talking to myself. So we're very multicultural. We've grown up knowing we're multicultural, but taking no notice of it. Like the Kiwis, they're in our country, they're Kiwis. So we have no prejudices or anything like that. Well, I don't. I don't think my generation. I find this, now that we hear what other countries with their, especially America, I don't like it. I don't like this talk of skin colour. I mean, I had a best friend, and I'm still best friends with her 50 years later. I only found out 10 years ago she was Maori, because she was my friend. I didn't see her as anything else but my friend. That's the way it should be, We're all different. We all have different ideas. We all have different... If we were all the same, wouldn't life be boring? Anyway, back to being a Kiwi. So anyway, yes, New Zealand are 2 islands, so we are surrounded by sea, rivers. We can drive 3 hours to our Southern Alps, which runs right up the centre of our South Island, and go skiing, and then drive 3 hours back to the beach and go surfing on the, so we're very sporty, very sporty. Any sport, we'll play it. As soon as we go to school, I think my first sport I played at primary school was rounders, which is the kiddie version of softball. So, and we used to play in the street at night with the after tea, all the kids came out from the neighbouring houses, and we'd play on the road, because there was hardly cars back then. And we'd play cricket or soccer in the roadway. And there was always someone that had an ear out if a car was coming, and they'd go, "Car," and everyone would run to the sides of the road and get on the footpaths. When the car had gone past, we'd get back into the middle of the street. No one ever complained, no one ever moaned. So it was a good, simple life. And like I said, Dunedin is a very very small country, and Dunedin even smaller, but we're very friendly. Like, we'll offer anyone a cup of tea or coffee or whatever. We'd always say, we'll pop the kettle on. And I love talking to people who are, if we get a chat going up the street, I usually ask them where they're from and, are they enjoying being in New Zealand and what do they think of Dunedin? And I love hearing their opinions. And lately we've had quite a few Indians in our neighbourhood. And I said, how do you cope with it being not very many people around? Like, you can walk down our streets and there might be one or two people on the footpath. And from what I can gather from places like India, it's very populated. And he said, took a while to get used to. And I thought, well, I suppose it would, And anyway, back to my younger days and the younger. So we moved to Tānui, which is near the beach, and I am an absolute horse lover. Absolutely love it. So Tahuna Park, after school, if there was any horse events on and there were horses there, I wouldn't go home. I'd go straight to Tahuna Park, get in there and start patting all the horses. But luckily Mum and Dad always knew, because my sister would tell. So sometimes it was good that she would tell, because Mum and Dad always knew where I was. And we just, and if it wasn't there, it was the beach, or when I got my first roller skates, we had just down the road here, there's a child park, and at the back of it was a roller skate rink, and it had buildings along the back. One part of it would be where people who didn't have roller skates could hire them, and then there'd be a little shop that you could buy an ice cream or a lolly or whatever. All gone now, of course, although that's gone. And of course playgrounds in New Zealand now, you've got to have rubber stuff under the swings, and you can't have kids getting hurt, and bad machines or bad equipment, playground equipment, banned. I don't know how we ever survived. I mean, I used to have, if I didn't have 10 scars on one leg, I'd have 5 on the other, or both. We just got hurt and picked ourselves up and carried on. It was part and parcel. If you get up on a swing and go high and you fall off, so be it. We were taught at school, this is funny, we had lessons. When you start school in New Zealand, you are taught to swim. It's because we are surrounded with water. So in my day, you were taught to swim, and you got a certificate at the end, like you might get. You'd have to learn to swim 100 metres, you'd have to learn to float, you'd have to learn to do 150 metres, and when you passed all that, you got a certificate. We also learnt very basic first aid, so if someone drowned, you knew how to do CPR. And another thing, and I find this so ironic, compared to back then to today, we would have the local policeman, we had the local bobby, we had bobbies on every community, and he would come to school and he would teach us road safety on the road. So how to look out for cars, how to look out for pedestrians, when to stop, when to go, blah, 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 blah. And we all did it. The whole class would go out and we'd all have our bikes and we'd all go and do this with the local bobby, who knew all the rules of what to do. Not a helmet in sight, not a knee pad, nothing. Some kids were biking in bare feet, probably me, and but that's how we learnt our road rules. You know, we drive on the left, we cycle on the left, we walk on the left. It's hard teaching the newcomers we walk on the left, but anyway, and that's what we learnt at school, and that's primary school. That's from 5 to 10. So we had all those lessons in the first stage of our lives, and it was good. And I think being a small country too, families all stayed in the same town. Nowadays, families are all spread out, whether it be for work, where they find work, like some move overseas for work, and people don't have family around them. But growing up, family was around. I remember Christmases, and they'd all come to mum and dad's, and we'd have a house full. Wonderful times. And big family meals. I was very lucky. I mean, we were brought up in the Salvation Army. I'm not getting onto religion. I'm just how we worked as a family and as a community. So I was brought up in a Salvation Army family. So all the family met there every Sunday anyway, or any church outing. So summertime we'd have picnics, church picnics. We'd take a train to, say, inland to Middlemarch, and we'd all stay there all day and play games and entertain each other. And the whole church would be there. The kids, the grandparents, the parents, everybody. And we'd just have a lovely time. 9 times out of 10, we'd all drive to some place like Waiнаkarua, where there's a river, and us kids would play in the river, and there was always cricket to play and all sorts. But also very much teaching us about community. So we'd have every Easter, all us young ones would make up Easter baskets. So we might put fruit in it, or fruit and flowers, and we'd take them all to church, and we'd show everyone like a little display of what we'd done. And then after church in the afternoon, we'd pack them all up, and we'd all take them to the senior citizens in the community, to the housing complexes, and we'd give them to the elderly. And that taught. Now I remember doing that when I was 3 or 4, knocking on someone's door and giving them either flowers or fruit or whatever. So, and also when we moved, we had a church lady 2 streets down. Now she never married, lived on her own, very elderly, very hard to walk. And we used to pick her up and take her to church. And as I got older, I think I might have been 8 or 9. And I was allowed to go in on my own, and we called her Auntie Lilla. In those days, if you weren't a relation, you were auntie or uncle. So Auntie Lilla, and I'd knock on her door, and she'd be ready, and I'd have her on my arm, and I'd take her to the car, and then we'd walk her into the church. So another thing that taught us about communities and helping others and just being good to each other. So I liked that about growing up. Yes, we're in a church, but it wasn't all about religion. It was about just being good to each other and being kind to each other. And I think my favourite part of the time of the year was Christmas. And if anyone knows Salvation Army, they always have a band. And in my day, they'd go and get the old coal truck, big flat deck truck, and they'd tie 4 pews along, so there was 2 on each side, rope it all down. When I think about it today, I'm thinking, oh my stars, they couldn't do it. They don't do it today, of course, because it wouldn't be allowed. But they'd rope all the seats to this flatbed, and the bandsmen used to get up on the top and start playing their Christmas carols, and they would just drive around the community, around the streets, and kids would come out and follow the trucks, and we'd be there, and it was just great fun, great feeling of nice warmth, I think. It was awesome. And yeah, everyone in the community, and Dunedin is made up of areas. So we lived in South Dunedin because it's, and then we had North Dunedin, and so we would drive around most of South Dunedin, and it was great. It was just a lovely time, and then summertime was always the best time because we just got out and played in the water, and Mum and Dad would take us to, I think once Peter had a tent, Peter and Elaine had a tent, my brother had a tent down at Waihola, and they were in the lagoons and they were fishing for flounder fish, and we'd arrive and we'd stay the whole day, and we'd do it as well and run around, and it was just great fun, and great things, and later on my brother moved to Wakawhite for a while, which is, what would that Wakawhite be? 20 minutes out of town? Yeah, 20 minutes out of town. They decided they wanted to go up there for a while. They had a wee house, so we used to go up there every so often and see them. And he started a taxi service there. And so I've got lovely photos of him beside the taxi and Dad beside the taxi, and of course it wasn't very profitable because there was probably 400 people that might have lived there. It was very, very small community. But anyway, they came back to town, which was great. They had 3 boys by then, so I was glad to have them back in town because they were closer to us and we got to see them a lot. And yeah, Mum and Dad were great. We'd go places. Oh, I must tell you, now we have a harbour, so it's sort of like a loop. If you Google it, I like Mr. Google. We have a sort of the harbour is sort of got a loop, so it comes down a channel and then into a. So if you're looking at it, I suppose it looks like a vial, like a chemistry bowl vial. So it comes down the channel and then opens up and goes around. So we have Portobello on one side and Port Chalmers on the other side. Port Chalmers is our port, so containers everywhere, and it's where all the now cruise ships come into park, because no one can get up the harbour now because the cruise ships are huge. But in my day, we used to think it was great going down there to play at the beach. But on the other side, we grew up, when you're at school in New Zealand, you learn anything and everything. So we learnt a lot of our own country and our own city. So most of it I'd learnt from my dad and my mum, because they would take us drives and they would show us. So we have the only existing disappearing gun in the world in Dunedin. It still works, and it's a lovely piece of machinery. Of course, nowadays you've got to pay to get in to see it, but us as kids, we used to stop the car and get out and look around and have great fun. And just past it is the albatross colony, which is one of the only places that comes and nests. One of these huge seabirds, because New Zealand is bird and lizard. That's what we learnt. And of course, we know now more. But yes, we don't have anything dangerous here. We don't have snakes, we don't have crocodiles, we don't have anything like that. I suppose the most vicious thing we have is seals that come and lie and go to sleep on the beach. But yeah, we have birds. We're a bird island. We have birds. We have the only tuatara, the living lizard, the longest living lizard, prehistoric creature, I think, in the world. Google it though, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right on that one. And we have skinks and other little lizards, and we used to love catching as kids. And we learnt about our Maori population here, and our Maori pars down the Portobello, and now this you might find interesting because we learnt at school. Scott, the chap who went to the South Pole, he stopped here. In the middle of our harbour we have an island, and it's called not isolation, something like that anyway, and Quarantine Island. That's the name of it, Quarantine Island. He had to stop there to get supplies and stay there until he was ready to get his ship to take him back down to the south, because we're not far. We're probably the lowest point between us and the South Pole, so we were his drop-off point. So that's great bit of history, that we were part of the Scott expedition to the South Pole, and also I don't like it, but we did learn all about it. We had whaling ports down Portobello, whaling stations where I don't know if they've cleared it up, but there was still the big machinery there where they used to make the oil and all that sort of thing. So we were a part of that horrid area as well. But they were the times. Now, our generation didn't cringe as much as we do now. Back then, we were just taught history of what we did as a country, and yeah, it's we just very much were taught our culture, the history of New Zealand, not just the Treaty of Waitangi, but I remember doing basket weaving at school. I remember we used to have big looms, and we learned how to loom, how to make blankets, and we'd make, oh gosh, how many pois I've made in my life, and taught my kids how to make. Loved the pois and the poi songs and the movements and the stick movements, and so we were taught all that. Everything was taught like that at school, and in our early days, so primary school, and a wee bit more into intermediate, which was 11 to 12-year-olds. So, but yeah, great days. We, I've said, very sporty country. Everyone knows us for our haka and our All Blacks, but we play anything and everything, any sport, squash to ping pong to hockey, baseball, you name it, we'll play it. And it's I suppose, would you call that a tradition? I don't know. Would you call that a tradition? Everybody is, even at school, you get into a sports club, and if there's nothing at school, you get one on the outside, and it's just part of what we do. And yeah, I've it's and it was much simpler back then. It was no big deal. Everything seems to be a big deal today. Are we doing it right? Are we allowed to do this? Are we allowed not to do this? And they keep changing the rules. When back when we were younger, I mean, I was born in the 50s, but my real awareness was the 60s, and it was just wonderful. I look back with fond memories, and not so some fond memories, some lessons learnt. I'll tell you a story. This will be the last before I close off and do another segment. But I was coming home from school with three of my friends or schoolmates. My sister was there as well, because we're all walking home past the shop, and I don't know, for some unknown reason, the kids all dared me to steal a lolly, so I was 7, I suppose. So I stole a lolly. And of course, tittle, tattle, sister tells mum, who immediately grabs me by the scruff of the neck, marches me right back to to the shop, demands I tell him what I did and pay for it, which I did, shamefaced, and paid for it. And then my mother shunted me home, and I don't think she spoke to me for the rest of the day. She was absolutely ashamed of me. Absolutely. I've never stolen a thing in my life since then. Ever. So whatever my mother did, she did right. She taught me a really valuable lesson. So if anyone wants to make that part of their teaching their children right from wrong, there you go. But yeah, shame me, it did. Wow. So anyway, listen, I'm going to close here, and because I've waffled, I'll probably forget what I've told you. I hope I've told you a wee bit of something of interest. If not, I'm still waffling to myself. Do Google if you want to check what I've said, and learn about things like the disappearing gun and our albatrosses and our castle, and enjoy. And hopefully I'll think up something to say next time, because there's always heaps. I mean, I'm 69 years old. There's that many years of things that I can remember. So take care for now. God bless. And I'll talk to you again. And bye.